Hello there everyone, and welcome back to Void Wolf Studios for our Sunday episode, where we get to look at some more orcs, because I love me some orkies, and we're slowly working our way through this series. Anywho, I decided in this episode that we were going to look into the different specialists, because whilst the orc boy is the average fella amongst the orc warg, as we discussed last week, they do kind of branch out into all kinds of different specialisms, because orc boys get, bored fairly quickly, and if they find something interesting that they enjoy doing, they tend to group together into various mobs. And we're going to talk about most of these today. Starting off with possibly by far the loudest of all of them, the looter. Now, an orc looter is essentially an orc who has loved the sound of gunfire and also loves nicking things. And these orcs tend to nick, steal, burrow, coerce, bludgeon, and otherwise steal anything they can get their hands on. This tends to be very loud, very big guns. It doesn't matter if it belongs to the Imperium, doesn't matter if it belongs to the Tau or anyone else. Any loud gun they will strip, try and take apart, and give to a mech to basically cobble together and make into a massive gun rack. Some of these guns are so large that they might make an anime protagonist from any mech gun-toting series blush at the sheer size, firepower, and ludicrousness of the energy output these things can have. And as far as a looter is concerned, the louder it is, the better. Because, really, looters aren't all that accurate. An orc doesn't really so much aim as point in the general direction of whatever they're shooting at. And frankly, some of these guns are so overpowered, large, and ridiculous that, well, to call them reliable is a bit of a joke, really. The looter's guns are anything but reliable, but they will do spectacular effects more often than not. And these guns are literally anything. Whilst looters in the game have essentially the same profile, the guns are effectively made of anything. Energy weapons, plasma, massive rockets, bullets, anything they can get their hands on that they can actually cobble together and give to the mech. In fact, because this process for orcs is incredibly expensive, looters have a reputation of being a bit underhanded, shall we say. They will basically get teeth for this stuff however they can. It doesn't matter how they do it. As far as they're concerned, the ends justify the means. And so long as they don't particularly piss off anyone too powerful, or anyone who's likely to bludgeon them into a small paste, the orcs overall put up with it. They're not happy about it because, well, having someone come along in the middle of the night whilst you're asleep, punch the living daylights out of you and nick all your teeth is a bit inconvenient. It's all part of orc culture. And possibly another aspect of this that, well, helps the looters not all get murdered en masse is the fact that the mechs who build these guns take great pride in trying them out, which is often why when looters go out in, squads and they bunch together and fire their weapons all in one go, the mechanic, who has the plenty of K's in how that name is spelt, will basically hang around with his own various inventions and watch his intrepid pioneers of weapons technology fire the abominations into whatever they are fighting at the time. And yeah, they are quite a beautiful unit, are they not? Especially if you can afford the models and have them in groups of 10, 20 models. Yeah, 20 of these is just absurd. And, well, they pretty much act as how you'd think. They stand back, they point the guns in the general direction, and let loose. And depending on how lucky you are, each gun essentially has D3 shots. So you take a D6. If you get 1 to 2, it's 1 shot. 3 to 4, it's 2. And 5 and 6, you get 3. So if you imagine you have, if you have 5 of these guys in an average size unit, you're rolling 5 D6s, and that's how many shots you get. Now, this is, of course, assuming you don't upgrade one of them into a spanner, the Ork Mech wannabe, who has his own special gun, normally a custom Mega Blaster. And you can have up to 20 of these guys, and, well, the strength and potential damage output of these things is enough that they'll make infantry units just disappear, and most tanks need to be a little worried about getting too close to these things. But yeah, keep them at the back, and don't let them get too close because, yeah, those orcs don't really have any means of fighting in close combat, and that's what the next category is for. Ork Burner Boys. Yes, the previous unit likes to fight things at a fair distance. In fact, on the tabletop, it's 48 inches. That's one of the longest range guns you can get. Well, for a standard game, shall we say. But a burner boy loves watching things cook under a nice hot fire and, This includes people. The burner boy likes to run forward, along with the other boys who are screaming their heads off, and just douse everything with fire. Often known as pyrotechnics, these guys are just bonkers. They're smoking cigars whilst they're doing this and just burning everything to hell because they love them toasty chicken, which tends to be humans and which they tend to eat afterwards because fun times. And hey, cooked meat tastes nicer, who knew? And burner boys are, well, let me put it this way. The fires coming out of some of these weapons, well, especially because they are orc weapons, which means they are not entirely reliable, means that sometimes the amount of firepower that can come out of these things is enough to even make Astartes' power armor start sweating. And yeah, burner boys are actually a very viable option to kill space marines. And the reason that they can actually cook even people in power armor is because these flamethrowers double as cutting torches. Yeah, that's a pretty horrific way to go. But hey, the food's already been pre-wrapped in tin, so it will seal in the freshness. It is for this reason that these burner boys have been given the lovely little name of can opener, because of their ability to just, well, burn and murderize through everything that they come across. And it is because of the burner boys' love of fire that they are given a wide berth from their compatriots, because burner boys just set everything on fire if they had their way. The wonderful smell of burning bodies, the flames licking up into the sky, and watching it shoot into a building and appear through all the holes. Yeah, burner boys live for that stuff. And yes, because these are orcs, whilst they do come in units of 5, you can have up to 10 flamethrowers. And for every 5, there's a spanner who comes along, much like the looters, who's there to make sure that, well, the flamethrowers don't just spontaneously explode on the wielder's back. Or, well, maybe it's more likely that they're there to watch the container explode on the wielder's back. Who knows? Orcs have a funny old sense of humour like that. Now, a common problem for orcs is how to get into combat as fast as possible whilst getting the most out of the day. And the Stormboys have found the solution. Yes, strap a giant rocket to my back and let me at 'em as you go hurtling off into the distance and sort of try and steer yourself in the best way you can. Orcs, I love these guys. So, Stormboys are your orcs' equivalent of jump pack infantry. Although to call them graceful and guided is, well, just no. Just no. Although, fun fact, Stormboys are actually the more disciplined, regimented, and, well, dare I say it, organised out of all the orcs. What do I mean by this? Well, Stormboys basically tend to be made up of the younger orcs. So what happens is, a younger orc who tends to be a bit more rebellious than his older, wiser, and longer in the tooth brothers, and he decides to go and join the Stormboys because he figures that this is the quickest way to get into combat and the quickest way to, punch stuff and have fun. But those Stormboys who are a bit older in the tooth have learned the value of training, drilling, discipline, and, well, making sure that you look good when doing it. For this reason, Stormboys have an amusing habit of wearing matching uniforms, learning how to march, and on top of that, all having nice furry hats with big goggles on, looking wonderfully like something out of a World War II film, with those wonderful bomber jackets that, you see your aviators wearing, and those funny little hats. Of course, it's an orc hat, so it's going to have horns sticking out of it, because by gum, there's going to be horns somewhere sticking out of that hat. But, it's still you can still see the influences of that look. But even weirder is that the Stormboys actually get taught to respect authority through this drilling, training, and regimented lifestyle. In fact, Stormboys are possibly the most organised, advanced force that the orcs actually have. Even though the fact that their rockets are anything but advanced. Sometimes it merely consists of a button that the orc is expected to hold in one hand, press, the rocket then launches, and the orc is expected to let go of the button to stop the rocket from firing. Now, mechs are twisted individuals sometimes, and sometimes they just might give an orc they don't particularly like this same jetpack with a button on, and they press it and, well, there is an earth-shattering kaboom, and no more Ork. But it's not very easy to deny the fact that Orks with a jetpack who get into close combat faster are surprisingly effective. And because of this regimented training that Stormboys have, they actually are very, very good in close combat. And well, I can't really imagine many things more terrifying than an Ork hurtling through the sky at me. So yeah, I could see the combat effectiveness there. What makes this image even more terrifying is that if you want to pay the points, you can have 30 Stormboys hurtling towards the enemy, moving 12 inches a turn, which is scary, or you can add an extra 6 inches, although you run the risk that if you roll a 1 on that dice, then one of your Stormboys dies, because one of his jetpacks has decided to malfunction and, well, crash. And armed with their trusty chopper and slugger, yeah, that's freaking terrifying. 30 of those things hurtling towards me. Bring up the guns. That would be my cry if I was the Imperial Commander, because I'd be shitting myself if 30 of these things turned up. Another sight that is bound to make any Imperial Commander wet himself with fear would be noticing a group of Orks moving towards his tank formations with massive hammers, rocket launchers, and bounding squigs with bombs strapped to them. Because these are Tankbusters. And they have some very interesting ways of going about it. So, we've talked about looters who love loud noises. We've talked about burners who like, well, fire. We've now talked about Stormboys who like hurtling through the air as fast as possible in order to get close to the enemy. Now we're talking about an Ork who enjoys explosions. Particularly explosions of things, well, way bigger than he is. Most of the time this tends to be tanks, or big monsters like some of the Tyranid Carnifexes, or anything larger than that. These Orks love a sight of a good explosion, and there's something primal they find in seeing something bigger than them just go kaboom. It's something that all Orks can appreciate in one way or another. Tankbusters are a very interesting unit in how they decide to go about this, though, because, well, some of their methods are unorthodox, shall we say? I think my personal favourite is the Tank Hammer, which looks like something out of Mad Max if ever I saw it. It's basically a hammer with a rocket launcher propellant. So the idea is the Ork, well, I would say sneaks up to the tank, but that's rarely the case, unless they're from a clan who enjoys being sneaky. The Ork will rush the tank, doing its best to either take the bullets coming from the tank or dodge out of the way, and, well, activate the rocket and then swing this thing into the tank. With one of, well, two fairly obvious things happening. One, that the rocket grenade-propelled hammer strikes the tank so hard that it busts a track, and two, that the Ork who used the hammer is either unconscious or has exploded due to the, a rocket-propelled hammer, for Christ's sakes. The slightly more reliable ways that Orks tend to destroy tanks, however, range from squigs, the wonderful bouncing fungal creatures with teeth, which I will get to in a separate video, because squigs deserve one. They are such cute little things. The other thing that Orks tend to enjoy blowing up tanks with tends to be the good old rocketer launcher. Highly inaccurate, incredibly powerful, and, well, ramshackled construction, these things are slightly more reliable than the average Ork weapon, but not by much. Or they have invented magnetic tank detonators. A bunch of these Orks will jump on top of the tank, they will slap these things to the hull, run away, well, the smarter ones will run away, and then watch the thing go kaboom. In fact, most Tankbuster Orks tend to hang around an experienced Ork watching him do his business and, well, handing in the bombs. And Orks have a charming little ceremony for the Ork who destroys his first tank. It tends to involve eating the crew of the now exploded tank and drinking the fuel, because an Ork's digestive system is just a bit of a magical mystery in and of itself, and petrol doesn't seem to do them that much harm. And, yeah, Tankbusters. You can take units of these, and 15 if you want to. And, yeah, 15 of these things running towards you. I would hope to goodness that your gunner is adequately trained to make sure he kills those Orks, because, yeah, they're they're either going to break their way into the tank, or they're going to immobilize it or explode it. There's kind of no way around this. And yeah, orcs are very determined creatures. No matter how thick that armor might be, they will get through it eventually. No matter how many orcs with tank hammers knock themselves unconscious or explode to achieve this. So, from massive explosions, flamethrowers, rocket-propelled jetpacks, and, well, all the madness we've currently talked about, we now go to an orc who couldn't really be any further to the opposite end of that spectrum. Silent, sneaky, for orcs, and thoroughly enjoying the feel of a slit throat going across their blades, the Commandos, spelled with a K because, orcs, are the orcs' answer to infiltration and espionage, although it would be hard-pressed to call anything an orc does as intelligent. Although, to be fair, the orc commandos are more intelligent than most of their brethren. Orc commandos tend to be spotted because they don't like socializing. They're very much introverted. They will avoid orcs, some of which will even leave their clans and just wander off into the jungle and live very solitary lives. And it is this biologically implanted need to be stealthy and the joy that these orcs feel from ambushing and from sneaky tactics that commandos tend to be grouped together and, well, go off and do things they've been asked to do by their war boss, or a mech, or whoever it is who's in charge of the warg at the time. An orc commando is very, very good at working out how to sneak behind the enemy lines, as well as blow things up, but as subtly as possible. They don't tend to like being spotted, and when they are, they tend to fight ferociously to make sure that their cover isn't blown. These orc commandos will do fantastic things to make sure this doesn't happen, including covering their blades in soot or tar so that any glint the metal might have had, they will cover up to make sure it doesn't. They have a lovely habit of covering themselves in dung, blood, and dirt, which essentially acts as camouflage, although you might be able to smell them coming at this rate. And they also take to using various contraptions such as infrared goggles or wonderful little headsets that allow them to talk to each other more quietly, or even being able to read. Madness, I say, madness. Orcs shouldn't bother with that kind of nonsense, which is why commandos tend to be shunned by most of orc society, because they're a bit weird, as far as the other orcs are concerned. But as I said, you cannot deny their usefulness. Orc commandos have broken open doors, they've destroyed factories, they've played havoc to tank formations. Orc commandos have definitely got their uses, especially on the tabletop if you have them fighting in terrain, appearing behind the enemy units, and, well, chucking their fantastic Tankbuster bombs at anything big that decides to, potentially become a nuisance. It is for this reason that an Orc Commando is a very effective fighting force. Don't get me wrong, they are not going to be able to be as good as, say, Vindicari assassins, or any assassin trained in the Imperium, or any human, or any Eldar. Good grief, an Eldar would walk circles round an Orc Commando when it came to stealth, grace, and espionage, but an Orc Commando has enough experience on moving quietly, as well as knowledge of the area and the ability to figure out how to set up an ambush, that they are very capable of pulling off some surprising things. And the last thing we're going to talk about for the Orcs are the Orc Warbikes. If you don't particularly like hurtling through the skies, but you do want to get to the enemy close, and you want to make lots of noise and fire loud guns whilst doing it, then an Orc Warbike is for you. An Orc who's able to get a hold of a bike is one lucky greenskin. But he needs to take it to his local mech to make it a true Warbike. Armed with Daka guns, large, armor-piercing, bullet-spewing guns that just wreck most things in front of them, and an engine that's far too big for the bike, wheels that are far too big for the bike, a frame that's really ramshackle, and, well, an exhaust that's about 12 times too big. And yeah, this thing is loud, noisy, smelly, but goes so fast that the Orc does not care, and they have the time of their lives speeding halfway across the battlefield, armed typically with a trusty chopper to make sure that they can just hack things in their way. Orc Warbikes are a fantastic outriding and shock assault unit, because nothing is more terrifying than an Orc slamming into you with a motorbike, because steering these things is hard enough. So complex maneuvers is not really something these Orc Warbikes are going to pull off, but it won't matter. because the mechs who build these things tend to build them to be so tough that you could probably slam it into a wall and, well, it will be repairable, if not immediately able to function. And you can take these things in pretty large numbers. You can give the boss knob in the group either a power claw or a big chopper, making him even more killy, and yeah, there's not a whole lot more to say about this unit because it ain't subtle. It's really not that subtle. In fact, some orcs have made this their entire warg. The Evil Sons clan being by far the most famous for having so many warbikes, it's just ridiculous. And I think for now we're going to call it there for the Ork specializations. And don't get me wrong, there are definitely some more, but these are more for the knob tier class of the Ork Society, plus you tend to get into more vehicles as we start going forward, and I'd like to keep that into a separate video. Anywho, I hope you have all enjoyed this episode. Thank you all so much for your subscriptions and for your support. 80 subscribers? Holy crap! I am really amazed at that. Thank you so much to everyone. If you get a chance, please check out the Patreon page, because I can only really do this thanks to the people who are supporting me on Patreon. And thank you again for checking out this channel. Please let me know if there's anything you'd like to see in the future, and I'll take it into consideration. I hope you all have a wonderful day wherever you are, and until then, take care everyone.